Good evening, everybody. This is going to be the video preview for Papilio's race in the $200,000 Here Comes the Bride, which is a Grade 3. It's run at Gulfstream on Saturday. You can catch these races on TVG. Our post is 3:01 Eastern, race 9. It'll be an earlier start at Gulfstream on Saturday because of Fountain of Youth Day. This will be Papilio's first start in the U.S. We're really excited to see her run. Mark Cassey sent a video the other day that we were able to send out to everybody, but, his opinion is that she's been training well. I think you're always a little bit cautious when these Euros come over for the first time to make their debut in America. It's a different style of racing. It's much quicker pace, much quicker out of the gates. A lot of the Euros can typically break slow. So, with all of that said, I think she's training well. Mark's excited to get her started. But this is kind of the starting point of what hopefully is going to be a successful year for her. So we want to see a good run. But more than anything, we're getting a run into where we can, take a swing here and then have a bunch of options later on in the season. So excited to get her kicked off on Saturday. With that, we'll go through the field really quickly. Anna Karenine is the one. I think this filly has okay form. You can see they have time form ratings. It's somewhat similar to Byers. But, like Lattesse Bouche, La Bouscat, Tarbes, those are all like regional French tracks. Deauville, Chantilly would be like the main track. So she ran well the small regional tracks. When she stepped up to the main, French track, she didn't run as well. She was fifth, beating 4 lengths in this Group 2 on firm ground, which she should get firm ground on Saturday. So, it's Chad Brown. He's obviously deadly with any Euros, but this horse to me at 5-1, I would just pass. I think the 2 is really interesting. This is a filly, anytime you see this circle with an X through it, that means that race was intended for the turf and it came off. So, you would see, a circle with a T in it for turf. If there's an X through it, it means it was intended for the turf and it came off the grass. She won that race really impressively first time out. They wanted to get her on the grass. I thought she ran really well in the spin away, just okay in the Frisette. Goldenrod didn't run any good. They get her back to the grass. Maybe that's what she's wanted the whole time. I could see her taking a big step forward. At 12-1, I think from just a pure betting perspective, she offers tons of value because I do think she has some ability. The 3 is Malimu. This filly, I thought she ran okay last time. It was kind of a weird, weirdly run race. Cairo Consort, who ended up winning, you can see here in bold. She missed the break, so she was pretty far back, and the dynamics of the race changed a little bit. But it was interesting. In the first race in the wait a while, she was basically dead last, and then here she was right on the lead. She broke from post 3, which is the same post she gets today. Maybe she's ridden more aggressively. It was just kind of weird to see 2 completely different styles of running. But at 15-1, I think the Swedish Chant probably was not the strongest race in the world. Cairo Consort won when she was pretty compromised. Like, had she broken with the field, she might have won even easier. And that's saying a lot because she ended up winning pretty easy. Next is Riding Pretty. This is a filly that is taking a step up. She ran second in an allowance back in December, came back to win an allowance by a neck. But to me, she's just going to have to take a step forward from a speed figure perspective. Would say the same thing about Blind Spot. Her 2-year-old form looked pretty good. They took her up to Keeneland, and she really didn't have a ton of excuses. It's her first start back. I think this would be should be a little bit of a surprise. Next, we get to Revelita, which is another Euro import for Chad. She, again, kind of her one race at Deauville, which would have been the main track, she didn't fare as well. She won her other 2 at more regional tracks. But it's Chad. I think to me, it's telling that Jose rides this filly. Irad is going to ride the favorite. And on the horse on the rail, you get Gaffleone. I'd say Jose would be a more favored rider for Chad if they don't get Irad. So to me, of the Chad horses, she feels like, maybe the preferred horse. But yeah, I think you compare kind of the form of some of her races to Papilio's races, and Papilio's races are much stronger. The favorite is going to be Cairo Consort. This filly has done really well. She broke her maiden on the grass last year. She won the Catch a Glimpse. She ran a really good second in the Natalma, and she came back and ran a really good third in the Breeders' Cup. These new connections paid $875,000 to buy her, and all she's done for them is come back and win 2 stakes. I think both of those fields were pretty soft, but last time, again, she completely missed the break, and she was just miles the best, and some of those horses come back in against her. So, do I think she's a world beater? No. I think she's going to be less than 3-1 with the connections. I wouldn't want to be betting her at 8-5, but she is probably the most likely winner of this race. She obviously is 2 for 2 at Gulfstream. She's very versatile with her running style. So she's certainly capable, but I think she'll be a very short price. So Papilio is next. And again, the form lines of her races are just much stronger. So she breaks her maiden at the Curragh, first time out in an 18-horse field, which you can see right there. The Curragh is the main track in Ireland. They run her in a group 2 where she's 8-1. She doesn't run very good. She gets just way too far back. She comes back and wins a little allowance at Killarney, which would be a little bit more of a fringe track, but they run her at Tipperary, which would be a decent track. And this race is actually against Colts. She kind of hits the front, looks like she's going to win, flattens out, runs second. But Helsing comes back to run second in the richest 2-year-old race in Ireland. They have an auction series races where the winner gets 600,000 euros. And Helsing was like second of 24 in that race in his next start. And she came back in the Moiglair stud. Tahira was probably the best 2-year-old in Europe last year. Meditate, if you draw a line, if you say this race never happened, Meditate definitely would have been the best 2-year-old. She was a multiple Grade 1 winner. She came over and won the Breeders' Cup. Later on, she ran second in an additional Group 1 after the Moiglair stud. And in that race, Papilio broke a little bit slow. The jockey just took her too far back. And it was very soft footing, which, I think hopefully she's going to prefer firmer footing. I think the one really interesting thing you can see here, her 2 best races are this listed stakes race where she runs against Colts, and then this median sire series, which is also against Colts. Both of those races were run on left-handed tracks, so you can see that the LH, which all American tracks are left-handed, so left-handed would be counterclockwise. So her 2 races around a bend, left-handed, are her 2 best performances. Anytime you see STR, that means the race was run in a straight, or like RH for some of the French races would be right-handed. But her 2 left-handed races are her 2 best, so we think a more American-style track would suit. Next, we get to Dance Macabre. This filly's stretching out to 2 turns. I don't think she's impossible. In general, I don't like horses like this that are kind of closing sprinters, and then they stretch out. I think you'll see the next horse, Moon Age Daydream. If I had to take one of these 2, I'd prefer the horse that's shown some speed, opened up late, with the pedigree that maybe says 2 turns would be better. And this horse is coming off of a layoff now. She's been working lights out down at Palm Meadows. But to me, I don't like horses that make up a bunch of ground going 6.5, and then they have to stretch out. I think you can kind of fool yourself into thinking the distance is a positive. Next, we get to Moon Age Daydream. I do think there's a fair amount of speed. I think this filly is probably the most likely pace setter given the fact she's drawn outside. But, again, comparing kind of the 9 and the 10, they're both stretching out from sprints. This filly's been on the lead. She's also shown the ability to sit just off in faster pace races. She's by Candy Ride out of a Malibu Moon mare. If I had to take one of the two, I just prefer the 10. Just historically, my experience tells me that this horse maybe has a better shot of stretching out. She doesn't feel like a speed crazy horse. And she did open up the last 16th. So you can see that, it was a half length lead. Then she ends up pulling away to win by a length and a quarter. I think she's going to be on the pace. I do think the pace could be pretty quick. Just given it being Papilio's first start in the U.S., I would expect her to have to rally from off the pace. So if there was a lot of pace, I think that would help. Tatuba is next. This filly's like mildly intriguing. She's running on the grass for the first time. Her pedigree says grass probably suits. She battled and won, broke her maiden last time. And it's just an aggressive move. You don't see Todd Pletcher have too many 30-1 horses in a stake, especially in a race where he's going to have the horse that's like 8-5. So to me, this is just a really aggressive spot, which maybe tells me they have a higher opinion of this horse. And maybe they think there's going to be a lot of improvement when they get this horse on the grass. And then finally, we get to Sweet Lou's Got Aces. This filly is another horse that's shown quite a bit of speed. I think drawn to the outside. I think they're going to have to be aggressive early. I don't know that she's what I would say is that she's not as fast as the 10. So maybe she sits just off. But again, I do think there's a fair amount of horses that have speed in here. You could maybe excuse her a little bit from her last start. She could have needed the run first start off a layoff. But overall, I think this is a pretty competitive field. Again, I would say Cairo Consort is definitely the most accomplished horse. She's the most likely winner. But I don't think she's like head and shoulders above. I mean, even if from a buyer perspective, her best buyer's an 82. You could see Dance McCobb's run 2 81s. Moon Age Daydream's running 81. So from a speed figure perspective, she's not that much faster visually. I think the last race was pretty impressive. But again, Cassie is, I think cautiously pretty high on Papilio. He said she's trained really well, and he's excited to get her started on Saturday. So best of luck to everybody in the Here Comes the Bride.